Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast, the show that takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible.
Welcome to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Hello. How's it going today? I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. I hope the sun is shining and you're feeling positive and happy. I know there is a lot going on in our world right now. It just seems like one thing after the next. Things are just crazy. Like 2020 has just been a whirlwind for so many different reasons, for so many different people, and I feel like we're all kind of, we're all experiencing, going through, the big things, but then we also all have our own life things going on, and it's really difficult to navigate your way through life when there's so much chaos and things going on in your world, and it's like you want to focus so much energy into helping our world and our communities, but we also always need to remember to be focusing on us and how we are feeling mentally, because we can never help the world. We can never fix anything else if we don't feel good about ourselves. And so, I feel like in times of crisis and in times of high stress and anxiety and just times of chaotic measures, our reaction can vary, and it can, sometimes be not who we really are. And, even in times of not crisis or stress, we can react in situations, that we don't like, that don't reflect the person that we want to be, or the person that we're trying to become, or even the person that we are at all. Maybe your reaction could be, it can be triggered by so many different things. Of course, our reactions are mostly, our emotions that kind of take over when we react to things, especially if we're reacting to something in quite the hasty, quick measures. It's probably our emotions taking over. So anyways, I just want to talk to you today about reactions and, how to make sure that we are reacting to things in appropriate ways. I just think that right now, with everything going on, making sure that we're stable and reacting, I guess, the way that we should be, is really crucial. And it's not just, in these big events that are happening around us, but just in our everyday lives, because we are high stress right now. We are high anxiety. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world. There's a lot of anger, and there's a lot of sadness, and, making sure that you're checking in with yourself and making sure that you have your emotions under control, I just think is a really important part, because like I said, we can never help the world. We can never help anyone else if we aren't in a good place ourselves. So we have to make sure that we are feeling good, that we are in a good place, that we feel in control of our emotions, because when we're not in control of our emotions, our reactions can be quite negative sometimes, and it can just reflect on someone that we don't want to be, or who we're not. And, have you ever someone's reacted to something and you just see them in a completely different light, because you're like, why did you, it just doesn't match up to who they are. And you're like, what do you mean? Like, that didn't seem like you at all. And it's probably the emotions taking over, the stress taking over. It can be situational, or it can be, you just haven't dealt with things, inside of you personally that you still need to deal with. And so our reactions, there's so many different factors that can affect the way that we react to things, and, to big crisis, to little things in our lives, to, maybe right now your reactions are, maybe you have quite the short temper, so your reactions are quite quick and angry, maybe a little bit of little bit of anger going on. So you're kind of, you have quick kind of feisty little reactions, and it might just be in big aspects of your life and just also like little silly things. Like you might find yourself reacting to things that are just silly and stupid, and you're like, why did I react like that? And first of all, it's so important to remember that emotions are high, stress is high, anxiety is high, and we need to give ourselves a little bit more leeway than we usually do, because we have to make sure that we are taking into account all of the things that are going around us, and a lot of these things that are happening, we have never experienced before individually, and so it can affect us all very differently. And how are you supposed to know how you're going to react in a crisis? How are you supposed to know how you're going to react during a pandemic? Or how are you're supposed to react to certain little things? Even if you react to something silly in your life, it could just be a reflection on something bigger that's going on. And it could always be something that's just you need to deal with inside of you. So today I'm going to talk about reactions and, just more appropriate ways that we can respond to big things in life and small things in life and just our everyday life, because we react to things constantly all the time. So I want to start with this quote. It's from Viktor Frankl. If you don't know who Viktor Frankl is, he was actually a survivor, a concentration camp survivor during the Holocaust. He's also someone who just kind of, after that, went on a journey to find goodness and meaning in life, and he wanted to share that and help others find goodness and meaning in life. And I just find him very interesting. I always find a lot of quotes about him. I find a lot of information about him, especially when I'm researching these podcasts and information to share with you. I run into lots of amazing people I get to learn about, which is part of why I love doing this podcast. I learned so much information, but this is a quote from Viktor Frankl, and it says, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." So I love that quote because I think that, first of all, it's so true. Between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. There is that moment that we get to choose our response. We get to choose how we react. And sometimes we might not feel like we get to choose. We don't feel like we are in control of our reactions. And I bet you a lot of the time, you really don't feel in control at all because maybe emotions or, high stress situations, anything like that. But there is that space in between the stimulus and the response where we get to choose how we're going to react, how we're going to handle this situation. And our response does reflect on our growth and who we are as a person and where we stand. I think it reflects our beliefs and, our morals, our values, things like that. And I'm saying this can be for big aspects of life and little aspects of life. It all kind of correlates together. I don't want to downplay anything that's happening in our world or anything like that, but it's true. We react to things constantly, and often we forget about that space where we get to choose our reaction. I bet you 9 times out of 10, when you feel like you didn't react well to something, you probably acted in a very hasty measure, probably pretty quick. And maybe whether that was angry or because you were sad or something like that, you had a powerful emotion taking over you. So when something happened, you reacted directly from that emotion instead of reacting from a better, safer, calmer place inside of you. A more organized and controlled and, whether that's calm or whatever, that kind of place inside of you where your good reactions come from and your good responses and the person that you are, because you do have that capability to pull out those responses from inside of you, but our emotions and the situation can someone take over and kind of cloud over our vision or make us feel like we are completely out of control to our reactions. And I talk a lot about what we can and cannot control in life. And there are certain things, of course, that we can control. And I believe our reaction is one of them. The way that we respond and handle situations, we can control that, even though oftentimes it does not feel like we can control it, but we do have the capability to control it. And then of course there's other factors that make us that we can't control. So, whether that you're put in a situation that made you extremely sad or made you extremely angry, you don't have control over that situation that just got brought upon you. And so that's when, our reaction and stuff, it's really important to make sure that you're in a good place, within yourself so that you can react and you can respond to that situation in an appropriate manner that you're not going to feel embarrassed about or angry about or upset or anything like that later on down the road. So I'm going to talk to you today about, ways that we can respond better, how we can find that space in between the stimulus and the response, because often it gets skipped over because of our emotions, kind of just skip over that little space. I like to call it our space for grace, right? We need that space to take a moment and to really, think about the way that we want to respond. And often it feels like I didn't have time to think about it. I didn't have time to reflect on it. I didn't have time to do this. And the number one thing that I can teach you, the number one thing I can tell you, which you've probably heard this a million times, is don't respond right away. Don't react right away. But easier said than done, am I right? Like, how do you not react right away, especially when you're in a highly emotional situation? I am definitely somebody who does this. I am definitely somebody who has done this in the past. I'm definitely working on it and continuing to work on my responses and my reactions to things. And I have definitely grown from where I was to where I am now. But sometimes we get presented with a situation and we react in a way that makes us feel like we've lost our progress, react in a way that makes us feel embarrassed, like that's not the version of us that we want to be, and we feel embarrassed. At least I do when I react in a way that all of a sudden, and before it wouldn't bother me until like later on down the road. But now if I react in a way that I'm less than impressed with myself for, I right away feel embarrassed. Give me like 2 minutes after I react and I'm like, oh no, why did I do that? I'm like, 2 minutes later, I'm already calm enough and like at the point where I realize, why did I do that? And so like, why can't we just wait those 2 minutes? Why can't I just wait those 2 minutes to respond to something? Especially if it's over like, phone or like over text message or online or something like that. We actually get that time. We get that time to take a break and not respond right away. But doesn't mean that your fingers might be typing a little bit faster than, even if when we get that break to respond, if you're in a high-speed text message fight, you're gonna respond right away because your emotions are high and that's just how, it's normal and it's natural. But we need to find coping mechanisms and ways that we can find that space, especially when it's not over technology. When we are face-to-face with a situation and we're put into this awkward position where we need to respond. And whether you're having a one-on-one conversation with somebody, maybe you're standing in front of a room with people, that's even worse. If you have all these people, all these eyes looking at you, maybe you're in a group kind of setting, whatever the case is, if you are face to face with someone or multiple people, they are waiting for your response. They are waiting for your reaction. And in a heightened, stressful, emotional time, those reactions might not come out the way that you want them to come out. So let's talk about finding that space and things that we can do to try to get our reactions better, to try to get our responses more appropriate, to try to understand the situations that we are in better and understand ourselves better so that we can act on it properly and we can respond in an appropriate way so that we never have to feel embarrassed or like, maybe we've lost progress because of the way that we reacted, and that's often where my mind goes, is I react in a certain way and I'm like, that was such an old me thing to do. I've grown from that. Why did I do that? And I get frustrated with myself. But remember, we're always constantly learning. We're always on this journey of growth and discovery within ourselves and with everything around us. And so we shouldn't feel guilty for, that was the old version of me. Why did I do that? Well, sometimes, the old version of you, if that's how you want to call it, is going to pop up because emotions are high and things happen and not everybody's perfect and we make mistakes. But I think the most important thing to remember is that even if you react in a way that maybe the old version of, I say that in air quotes, old version of you, would have reacted, or you react in a way that's just, not you. You don't feel normal about it. It's also really important not to tear yourself down for that and to, make yourself feel crappy about the way that you responded, the way that you reacted, because obviously there's something more going on, whether that's, emotionally or internally, or maybe there's outside factors that are going on that are playing a part in your reaction and your response to something. Like, you have to really take in all the factors, and you can't be too hard on yourself. Easier said than done, but everything in life is easier said than done. Let's be real here. Like, that is ridiculous. It is so true. Everything in life is easier said than done. How are we supposed to, completely just get up and you can't just wake up and be perfect. You can't just wake up and expect your reactions to be normal and civil if you're in a situation of high intensity and anxiety and anger and sadness and emotions and all these different things. Okay, now I feel like I'm rambling on, but today I do really want to talk about ways that we can find that space in between the stimulus and the response, and finding that space and using that space wisely and appropriately for the person that we are. So yes, today is all about reactions. It is time for a break, but don't go anywhere. When we get back, I have more to share with you, so stay tuned.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast. We are talking about what happens between a stimulus and a response, which is the space that we get to decide how we are going to respond, how we are going to react. So think about this. Consider the person you want to be, the person that you would like to be, the best version of yourself that I talk about constantly all the time. Especially think about yourself in situations that you struggle in. If you struggle in, maybe you're having a hard time in your relationship with your significant other, and you're finding that you're reacting in quite hasty, angry, kind of frustrated ways, right? And so think about who you want to be in that relationship. What kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be somebody who, has a short temper and gets hasty and defensive? Or do you want to be somebody that's patient and understanding and wants to, be able to compromise in your relationship and have a healthier response? So always think of a clear vision of the more ideal version of yourself. If you want to be that patient and that understanding and, the type of person that really tries to let somebody explain themselves before we react in a negative way, or if you want to be that person that, that never responds in an angry, emotional way for a situation that doesn't need that kind of response, right? So you have to think about who you want to be. And if you want to be that patient, calm, understanding person, then that's something that you need to think of when you're in those situations. Or, I say this all the time, but do some self-reflection of who you want to be and how you want to feel. And once you can start figuring that out, then, when you get a more clear vision of the version you want to be, it's a lot easier to think about that version of you when you're put into a situation. Also think of the meaning or the origin of your reactions. So there is a reason that you react the way that you do. And so if you're finding a continuous pattern of the way that you're reacting to something, like just an example, if you are reacting with your significant other, you keep reacting in an annoyed, frustrated, kind of angry type of way, okay, so maybe like, you know, take a step back and really try to pinpoint the meaning or the origin of your reaction. Why are you reacting that way? You know, is it because, you know, they've done something that, you know, you haven't quite forgiven them for maybe, and that you need to work that through? Or maybe you're reacting because, you know, you haven't slept well in 2 weeks and you're just feisty and you're in a grumpy mood. You know, try to find the origin of your reactions, and especially if it's a pattern, it's a consecutive cycle of negative reactions to a certain situation, then there's probably a deeper problem that you need to tap in on rather than just high emotions. There's probably something that you have not dealt with. So always trying to find the origin of your reaction, especially in a pattern form. Observe the outcome of your reactions. If you're paying really close attention to your reactions and the way that people react to your reaction, you're going to get you know, maybe some negative feedback, maybe some positive feedback from the way that you are reacting. And if you actually pay more attention to, you know, say that you react away in a group of people and you actually pay attention to what they do after that reaction, you know, you might, first of all, you might feel more embarrassed. But sometimes we have to observe the actual outcome of our reactions and feel that embarrassment or feel that, oh, you know, why did I do that? Why did I react that way? So that we're not going to do it again. And so the more that you observe, especially if you are reacting in a negative way, and you observe the way that other people react to your reaction, it's going to sting probably a little bit. It might hurt right away, but then you, I think, understand a little bit more that the way that you're reacting is not, it wasn't proper, it wasn't appropriate, it wasn't a good way to respond to the situation. So you might note that your impatience, you know, makes it impossible for you to effectively solve these problems. And so if you're paying attention to the outcome of these and you're paying attention, okay, I need to focus on my patience because I just, you know, I'm in a conversation with all my friends and I have no patience and I just jump in and I react and I don't, you know, I say things I don't mean because I'm just impatient and I want to get my point out there. So maybe you need to work on your patience a little bit more. So when you focus on your outcome, I think we just become more aware of also the origin of our reaction too, right? It all kind of plays in a hand in hand, kind of in a circle, right? In your head, imagine a better response. Think about better ways to respond. This goes hand in hand with considering the person you would like to be. After you react to something, if it's in a negative way and you feel that embarrassment, you feel that, oh, why did I do that? You're kind of sad about it for yourself. You know, take a step back and really think, imagine a better response. Okay, how could have I responded to that situation better? Okay, and then think that in your head, say it out loud, you know, and if you can, and if you're in the situation to respond in a better way, even though after you responded in a negative way, I know that is one of the most difficult things to do, to be like, ooh, I did not mean to yell at you 30 seconds ago. Can we just like rewind? Sometimes too, like if you just explain to somebody, look, I am really high emotions. I didn't mean to react that way. I would really like to react in this way instead. So you don't even have to imagine your better response. Actually say it out loud if you get the chance to. This could be a really scary thing at first, but it can really make you feel better instantly because it's, okay, I reacted badly. Give that person the chance to understand because people are more understanding than you think they're going to be. So give them that person the chance to understand. Ooh, sorry, I'm in a very emotional state right now. Can we rewind 30 seconds? And this is how I would actually like to respond to what you said or how I would like to respond to the situation. People will appreciate that as much as it's embarrassing for you to do maybe up front. People will appreciate the effort you put in to do that. And then, of course, just learning how to be more compassionate to yourself and understand that, yeah, our emotions are high and sometimes we react in emotional ways. And that is normal. We're humans. We have that reaction and you need to accept yourself and you need to accept and be compassionate for yourself and feel your own pain. You reacted in a way because you're put into a very emotional situation that has hurt you. You know, maybe you got a broken heart or something happened and you're reacting because of that. And you have to show yourself some compassion and give yourself a break sometimes, because, we can't be perfect. And when we're put into these emotional states, our emotional reactions are just going to happen. So you have to be, be compassionate for yourself. But, you have to find that fine line of being compassionate and being kind to yourself and forgiving yourself. And then the other side of the line that you need to, make sure that you are reacting, to the best of your ability to the person that you want to be, because we are still growing every single day, and you want to keep growing forward. So, you can't give yourself too much leeway, but always show yourself some compassion. I know it's kind of confusing, but it goes back, it goes hand in hand. We have to be kind to ourselves, but we also have to find that line of being stern and making sure that we are becoming the person we want to be. You might just need to learn some particular skills in making some actual, sustainable changes to your reactions. Like, for instance, you might want to learn skills of, being assertive. Maybe you need some anger management skills. Maybe you need to be more social. Maybe you need to be more patient and relaxed, things like this. And so when you find the origin of your response, you look at the outcome of your responses or your reactions, you are showing compassion to yourself, but you're also considering the person that you would like to be and the origin of everything, then you'll start to find out things that maybe you need to work on a little bit more. So we need to learn how to react well, and managing your emotional reactions basically means choosing how and when to express the emotions that we feel. And I'm not one to tell you to stuff your emotions down and pretend that it doesn't hurt when it hurts. If you're angry, you're going to react in an angry way. We just need to try to find that and challenge that energy into an appropriate manner. You are allowed to feel any way you want to feel. You are allowed to be angry. You are allowed to be sad. You are allowed to be heartbroken if someone broke your heart. That is completely fine, and I'm never going to tell you to stuff your emotions down and not react with your emotions. But that being said, we need to manage our emotions and express them in a healthy way. You should always express your feelings and express your emotions. You should never bottle things down like that. But the difference between somebody who emotionally reacts and a person who actually emotionally responds is very different. So an emotional reaction is when our anger, our sadness, our heavy emotion takes over and reacts automatically, right? We act in, maybe we yell, maybe we're saying something mean, maybe it's a negative reaction because of our emotions are so high. But you're like, I'm feeling angry, so I want to scream. And I get that. 100% get that. But there's, and I'm not saying that you're not allowed to be angry. Like, you are allowed to react in a more angry, I shouldn't even say angry tone, but an angry way. So the difference between, that emotional reaction compared to emotional response is focusing on how and when you express your emotions and the way that you are feeling. So we have to react to situations in productive ways. We have to express our feelings. We have to respond our feelings, in a very particular how and when kind of matter. And those are the two questions that you should be asking yourself. How and when should I express my feelings about the situation, about, what just happened or anything like that? Okay, it's time for another break, but when we get back, I'm going to be talking about more tips on emotionally responding instead of emotionally reacting. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Okay, so we are talking about emotional responses instead of emotional reactions. So this is the difference between expressing our emotions basically in a healthy manner compared to an, maybe more negative, unhealthy manner. So people who express their emotions in productive ways, they know that they can choose the way that they react instead of letting emotions influence them to do or say something that they later regret. Like I said, in the moment, you're angry or you're heartbroken, you're going to react in that way. But we have to take the time to slow down, find that space, and the number one thing I think that we can do is not respond right away. If you have the opportunity to not respond to a situation that you feel highly emotional in, do not respond. Easier said than done, like I've said at the beginning of this episode. But if you're able to just pause and just take some time, do it. And if you do get that time, I suggest writing things down. I suggest finding a notebook and scribbling notes or your journal and writing things down, getting those emotions out, because if you feel like you were going to react in a bad way, you want to scream, you want to yell, you're going to want to say things that you are probably going to regret, write them down. Write a letter. Letters, I think, are the best way to get our reactions, our negative reactions out so that we can respond in a better way later on. So if you have the chance to not respond at all and just write a letter, maybe it's to this person or about the situation, whatever it is, write your letter. You don't have to send it. You don't have to show anyone, but you can get all that frustration or the sadness out in your letter. And then you feel that weight lifted off your shoulder, and now you have a clearer mind to respond in a healthier, more appropriate way. So people who are reacting in productive ways, responding in productive ways, you have a sense of when it's best to speak out. Maybe you need to give it a week. Maybe you need to give it only a couple hours before you speak out. Maybe you need to, give it a bunch of time or a little bit of time, or maybe you need to, find a different way around it, whatever the case is. People who are responding in productive ways find the best time to respond. So if you get that chance to take the time for your space and write things down, get out that negative energy, 100% do it. So you might have been in a situation where either you've seen somebody or yourself has reacted in a way that was, maybe too emotional, makes you cringe, makes you feel embarrassed, like I've been saying, or, you feel like you had no self-control over your emotions or the way that you reacted. And so this all kind of correlates with emotions in general and emotional intelligence, which I will do a whole episode on itself because there's just so much information that comes along with emotional intelligence. But some basic kind of steps or things that you should be aware of when we're talking about reactions and our emotional responses is just being emotionally aware. Understanding what emotions you are feeling is a very, very good first step in making sure that you're not going to emotionally react. So understanding and accepting those emotions, being able to be, do I feel angry right now? Do I feel jealous? Do I feel frustrated? Do I feel sad? Do I feel disappointed? Actually understanding how you're feeling is a really great thing to do. So lots of self-reflection can help with that. So accepting those emotions too, accepting yourself that you are angry and letting that out in a different way. So I'll do a whole episode on emotional intelligence one time, but being emotionally aware, I think, is very, very important into controlling your emotions and the way that you react. Another thing that we can do is ask for guidance. If you get the chance to have that space in between your stimulus and response to literally ask for guidance, do it. We have friends and family that are here to help us along the way. There's so many people that will answer your question, that will help you, that will calm you down before you react in a certain way. So make sure if you get the chance to ask for guidance, do it. Find a healthy outlet. Now, like I said, writing these things down, writing a letter. For me, that is my healthy outlet. I like to write. That might not be your healthy outlet. Another thing that I do is I run or I work out. That's a way that I release my emotions, is just by getting some exercise, getting a sweat on. Usually, even if I'm like super anxious, I'll go for a run. And it might be, maybe I'm kind of a mess during the run. Maybe I am still anxious throughout the entire run. But when I get home and I lay down, or I take a break, or I start my stretching, I feel this sense of, I did release some pressure. I feel a little bit of a weight lifted off my shoulders. So you have to find that healthy outlet for you. It's different for everybody. Me, writing and exercise, which is always why I use those two examples, which I think those are two basic things that most people can do. So give it a shot. I think it is a very, very beneficial way to release those emotions so that you can focus on a better response and reaction. Always see the bigger picture. Try to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Finding a different perspective is another amazing way, I think, to have better reactions and better responses. If you can look at a situation in a different perspective, maybe from their eyes or somebody else's views, trying to look at the bigger picture, whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. Everything in our life serves a purpose, and often we don't understand why things happen the way that they do until later on down the road, especially in a negative situation. We're like, why did this happen to me? And then all of a sudden, 2 years down the road, when you bump into somebody or something happens, you're like, that's why that happened. I understand. I'm in a better place now. So if you are able to put yourself into that bigger picture or get a different perspective on the situation, I highly suggest doing that. And then, of course, replacing your thoughts. And so replacing the way that you talk to yourself. If you are sitting there in a group of people and you know that you're getting angry and you're about to react in a way that is negative, try to replace the way that you are talking to yourself in your head, and then it'll probably come out in a better way as well. I talk a lot about replacing our own narrative, our own dialogue in our head with better ways to just make ourselves feel better. I know it sounds silly just to say, change the way we are talking in our head. How is that really going to affect the way that I'm feeling? It affects it more than you think. If you repeat to yourself, I am okay, I am calm, deep breath, and you kind of repeat yourself like this, you actually will be okay and you will feel more calm, and you can take those deep breaths and calm down. And it sounds silly in your head, but it actually works. Your brain is listening to you and you will start to be more calm. So never doubt the power of just changing your own narrative in your head. And then lastly, I want to just say to always forgive your emotional triggers. So when you do also find your origins of the way that you're reacting, these might involve your emotional triggers. It might be your best friend, it might be a family member, it might be yourself, it might be, this sudden wave of anger, it might be the way that someone says something, it might be, your environment. When you're in a certain environment, you might react a certain way with your emotions. Our brains are automatically associated, our emotions are automatically associated with our environments. So if you're in an environment that makes you feel emotionally triggered, you're probably not going to respond in the best way. And sometimes you have to give yourself some more lenience and some more, just a leeway and forgiveness for the way that you're reacting, because you are put into an environment where you are not the best version of yourself. So always try to forgive your emotional triggers. But that, of course, involves knowing your emotional triggers. So being aware and paying attention to your emotions and what makes you trigger, what makes you so upset, the origins of your reactions, that is a huge thing in bettering your responses and actually understanding that space between the stimulus and the response. Sometimes it is literal space. You literally get to take the time to not respond right away, to calm down, to ask for guidance, to think about the person that you are, to find the origin of that reaction, all those different things. Or you might not get that space and you might have to respond right away. Like in most situations, we have to just respond, or we have that no self-control to respond. And even if you feel like you have no self-control and you respond in a negative way, I just don't be so hard on yourself. Just take the time to reflect on it so that you can grow from it and hopefully not respond in that way again. I hope this episode gave you a little bit of an eye-opening of that space in between the stimulus and response. I just feel like, more times than not, we feel out of control in an emotional response type of situation. And it's scary to feel like you don't have control of your own emotions or the way that you were responding. So I hope this kind of gave you some guidance or some more clarity of that there is that space there. Sometimes we just have to create that space ourselves, whether that's like physical time, space, or in our heads, we have to quickly, try to change our thought pattern, change the way we are talking, and, kind of focus on that before we respond. But it's different for everybody, and always know that your responses and your reactions, it can change in any given setting at any time. And you might be doing really, really well for a really long time, and then something happens and you just react in a way that you're not so proud of. That's okay. We're always growing, we're always moving, and different emotional situations are going to come and go. So never be too hard on yourself, and always practice compassion for yourself, because that is so important in, this journey of life. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. I had such an amazing time talking about reactions today. This episode was just inspired by so much chaos going on, and I know, people are reacting in so many different ways, and we're also reacting to things in our life still. And I just think that the chaos going on in our world can have an impact on the way that we react into our own life situations. So just give yourself some compassion and some kindness, and treat yourself with love right now, and patience and acceptance, because that is all you can do. Thank you so much for listening, though. Please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, to like and follow us on social media, and leave a 5-star review. I look forward to sharing more information with you next time. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful week ahead, and I just can't wait till next time. Thank you. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find the show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast.